Hi, I'm Britten and this is Moon to Moon. Moon to Moon is a space to consider, celebrate, and share the ways we come home to ourselves, anchor through change, and uncover our power. 1 month, one phase, one loving step at a time. Hello, Moon to Moon. I'm coming to you today with a conversation with two of the participants in the Emergence Astrology experience, which is the 1 to 3 year program that I'm currently in the middle of creating. A space for your mysticism, a space for your personal gnosis. Gnosis meaning your own knowing deep inside. A space to hold your vastness and your multiplicities. A space to unshame in a regular way, in a devoted way, with the many younger parts of you who may not realize that the larger you is holding you in being here. This is a community space, but it's also a personal space. It's very fractal in its intentions and in its experiencing. Two of the participants who are finishing year one are coming on here today to talk to you about their experience in year one, especially experiencing the structure of year one as it's currently created. I don't have any intention of changing it. Year one is really unique because it begins with a 9-month hermitage. And then the year ends with a 3-month salon. So for real, you're going into Emergence Astrology Year One and there are no meetups. There's no group initiation. There's no forum. There's no Q&A. It's you going into your own cave. And I'm providing this breadth of material, this depth of material that I invite you to come into in a particular kind of rhythmic way, the daily, the weekly, and the monthly aspects of it that create the structure of the hermitage for yourself. But I'm also leaving you up to your own curriculum, because come spring, there's no test, there's no check to be sure like you did it, you did anything I gave you. That's completely up to you. Everything that I provide, what I welcome you to do constantly, and I'm regularly reminding you of this, is that you are led by your own desire. You are led by your own delight. You are led by your questions and curiosities. You guide yourself in the curriculum because it feels good. That's what's like the internal authority voice that is getting fortified in this experience. And it's a confrontation and it's an encounter because, as you can imagine, if you go into a 9-month hermitage as you would going into a 9-month pregnancy, there's a lot of expectation, there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of fear, there can be a lot of ideas about what it has to look like. And like in a 9-month pregnancy, there's a lot of surrender. There's a lot of, oh, I didn't know it was going to be like this. or, oh, I thought I was going to be doing it differently. I thought this was going to be experienced differently. And so there's a confrontation that can happen in the Hermitage as you encounter how you're greeting yourself, where you had expectations and ideas about what the learning process needs to look like for it to be a quote unquote success. And that is all on purpose. That's actually what the curriculum is about. So that when you come to the spring salon, you have spent time with yourself. You have spent time holding yourself through the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of cycle, holding yourself in this hermitage, listening to emergently what you want it to be, and allowing that to adapt, and allowing yourself to create a rhythm that can hold you while also allowing yourself to be fluid enough to be adaptable. And no one can really tell you about the timing of those things, the pace of those things, the rules of those things, because that's for you and your hermitage to get clear on and to validate for yourself. And of course, this is actually practice for being alive and being here and being in charge of ourselves, being our own authorities, which is what the mystical pathway asks of us, is this kind of agency, authority, and sovereignty to trust in ourselves. So Emergence Astrology Year One is a practice space for building that out and fortifying that out and rooting it down. And then we come together in the spring, and it has this very different vibration because we've all just shown up after this whole gestation period, this incubation period. So what you're going to be hearing about from these two wonderful participants, who I'll introduce in a moment, is their experiences of this year, this especially focusing on the hermitage, but we really speak to the wholeness of the year. They're both so wise, and they're both so wonderful to listen to. There's so much that comes through their voice in this conversation, really inviting you to listen all the way to the end. As it often happens in conversations, some of the juiciest fruit falls at the end after the ripening of just coming together. It was a really sweet experience. You know, both of them have not been on podcasts before. They both were a little bit nervous. And what happened was what tends to happen when students come on as guests is the frequency of the container and of the larger container, which I think of as Emergence Astrology, begins to just move through the whole of the space, and it carries us and creates the feeling of being together. And when we have that feeling of being together, it's like all of our bodies begin to soften and relax, and we just start having a really great time, and wisdom just spills out into the space. So it feels a lot like being together in class, which is a beautiful feeling. And it's why I feel that those who love being in my spaces keep coming back, is because it feels really good. And you want to find out like what's going to happen, what will emerge from our time together. So I want to get us to the conversation, but I want to tell you a little bit about some of the things that will come up in case they're confusing to you without context. So both Seana and Donna talk about how my framing of the Hermitage as a pregnancy in promo last year was really impactful for them for very different reasons, and really drew them in and seduced them into saying yes, because what I was feeling in the promo and describing, having never taught this before and knowing that I was going into the most emergent thing that I've ever done, the most emergent creation I've ever offered. Like, do you want to do this experiment with me? Because it's gonna be weird, and I really don't know what it's gonna be like for you. But this is the vibe. You ready for the vibe? And I described the vibe, and I talked about this picture of, like, we have this picture of mystics wearing these robes, and we're always like seeing them as like kind of like neutered, like not very erotic, like everything's just spiritual. Only, like, there's not a lot of thrust to our pictures of mystics. And one of my favorite counters to this would be the dirt of the bottom of Gandalf the Grey's robes in the Fellowship of the Ring before he becomes Gandalf the White, who I also love. But I loved the kind of earthiness of Gandalf the Grey. That's the vibe. And so I was describing, like, but what's under the mystic's robe, you know? And for me, my mysticism has brought me into an encounter with my hybridity. And as I shared in the podcast from last year, I didn't know I had chicken feet until my mystical path. I didn't know about my fangs until my mystical path. I didn't know about the horns growing out of my head until my mystical path. And I didn't know about my big dick until my mystical path. And also, underneath that mystic's robe is a pregnant belly. You go into a hermitage and you do not come out the same person. Especially when you give it a container, you give it a container, like, this is the start and this is the end. You are not going to be the same person. You're not going to be the same person. You are birthing yourself. This is a very Virgo picture. The hermit is associated with Virgo in the tarot. In the esoteric, phrasing, is it esoteric astrology? Alice Bailey? I have to look that up, but there's this phrasing for Virgo that is, I am the parent and the child, or I am the mother and the child. Not in a gender essential kind of way, but this idea of a hermitage is like, you are pregnant. You are pregnant with yourself. And it takes a while to know you're pregnant, Like, you feel different, but you don't necessarily feel good in the first trimester. You really don't start showing until 5-6 months. And you don't know what kind of baby you're going to get. So I'm going to right here, I'm going to drop in the clip from the podcast last year when I was describing this, which is what drew Seana and Donna in. I'll see you on the other side of this 2 to 3 minute clip. And so you're really going to be, getting pregnant here with your self, It's just swollen with this self that's coming forward. And when you are pregnant, you don't look pregnant for 5 months. So it takes time to understand that you're different. And you can't control the kind of baby you have. This is the funny thing about having babies. But it's what I've been feeling is give me that big belly out baby. Give me that gap-toothed baby. Give me that sticky-haired baby. Give me that food all over your face, baby. Give me that dirt in your fingernails, baby. This is the babies we're calling in. Yeah. These are the babies. These are the babies. So, it's like, who's the mama? Who's the mama? Of course, you're the mama. But also, like, who's not the mama? Britten LaRue's not the mama. No. Astrology's not even the mama. If there's a mama, I would say it's the night sky. It's the sun and stars. It's the cosmos holding us, which is also you. Do you see what I'm talking about? Do you feel it? So there you have that. We're making babies. We are making babies. We're making babies. We're making babies. And what was really cool is, this course, this experience has really been bringing out my singing voice. It's super vulnerable, as Seana and Donna talk about, just like watching me in the vulnerability of my singing, just being really inspirational to them. And yeah, this course is the most vulnerable thing I've ever done. It continues to be. I've never done year 2 before, and now I'm going to be creating year 2. And I'm so in the dark with this offer. My guides are like extremely insistent that I experience this so emergently. So going into the second year of doing year 1, which I'm inviting you into, listener, to join this experience with us. So you would be doing year 1, and Seana and Donna will be in year 2, and you'd be in it together in the sense of like you're in the field, you're in the webs together. Who knows, maybe there will be times where we all get together. I don't know. That will drop in emergently. But anytime I return to do something again, I see this every year with the Magician's Table, like I'm required by the offering to update my relationship to it. It's a wild thing to see the effects of and hear about the effects of what was coming through the channel and then how that was received. So let me bring you to Seana and Donna. I'm going to read their bios, and then we'll just get on into the conversation so you can learn about what it was like for them. This is a really unique experience, and now you get to find out what it was like. And I'm sure for every single participant, it was a completely different experience. So I'm going to read their bios, and then I will meet you at the end of this episode with a few more words to wrap things up. I hope you'll stay all the way to the end. Enjoy. Here is Donna's bio. This is written in the first person. Thank you for this, Donna. Hi, my name is Donna Holt, and my lifelong joy in helping others navigate knotted life experiences began with removing burdock seed pods from a beloved collie and untangling junior high classmates' fine chain necklaces. I have been honored to provide safe space for, assist with, bear witness to, and celebrate clients' unfolding freedom for 30 plus years as a massage therapist and 20 years as an astrologer. I love using my hands, voice, and presence to bring this question from my heart to yours, Did you know that your every little liberation floods the world with delight? That is so beautiful, Donna. And Donna's contact information is in the show notes. Seana, here's Seana's bio. Seana Peterson is a Black queer psychotherapist, mystic, tarot reader, and ongoing student of astrology. Her work explores the lifelong adventure of creating an inner home that supports change, healing, and emergence. She is based primarily in Barbados, listening to the call of her ancestors. Seana offers internal family systems, IFS, and EMDR therapy and therapy intensives for folks located in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and New York. Learn more about Seana's work at seanapeterson.com and tinyislandtarot.com. Those links are in the show notes. Thank you, Seana. Thank you all so much for that beautiful Friday conversation. I can still feel what it was like to be with you. I'm so excited to share that frequency with listeners now. Welcome to Moon, Donna and Seana. So glad you're here.
Good
So
to
glad
be here.
Thank you, Britten.
Yeah, to dive on in, I'd love it if y'all could introduce yourselves, share your name, pronouns, where you're calling in from, maybe share a bit about your chart, anything that feels alive for you to share today. And I'd love for you to anchor listeners in how we're connected, maybe remembering when you found my work or like what the first doorway was that you entered. Thank you. Yeah, Donna, go for it.
Okay. Right. Yeah, so I'm Donna Holt, and I'm actually here in Ithaca, New York, which is in upstate New York. And I am using she, they pronouns. And uh, how did I first? Well, oh yeah, chart. We go. Um, I am a Scorpio rising for sure. A Leo sun and the Sag moon. And yeah, I love the sad the both the Sag moon and the Scorpio rising parts of me have been particularly well fed from this delectable bounty that you offered here. And so how did I first come into contact with you was spring of 2024 when you did your interview with Chris Brennan on Unshaming the Signs. And that was, it blew my mind. And also, as my first astrology teacher ever said, when I see, hear, feel truth, it goes right to my tear ducts. So I bawled a lot during that, and listened to that multiple times. So that was my entry into you and your work. And yeah.
Oh, thank you. So sweet.
And I'm Seana Peterson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling in today from Mansfield, Massachusetts, close to where I grew up, but I live in Barbados, which I can talk about a little bit at some point. That was part of my experience in Emergence Astrology Year One. And I am a Virgo sun, a Capricorn rising, and a Pisces moon. And my Pisces moon, all of my parts and all parts of my chart felt very well fed by this experience, but particularly my Pisces moon is deeply, deeply nourished by the Hermitage. And Britten, we do go back. We go far back. I think I've mentioned to you before that the first time I ever came across you was on Reddit in 2020. So I was like, it was COVID, and I was on Reddit on the astrology subreddit, and I was looking to do a reading with somebody new. And I just asked in the group, like, does anybody recommend someone? And somebody, an anonymous somebody, recommended you. And I've always felt very grateful to that anonymous somebody, because I ended up getting a year ahead reading from you for 2021. And that reading, like, in some ways, I feel like I'm still living into that reading. Like, I'm growing into the reading that you gave me at that time. I remember, like, I can see all of the cards in my mind. And the one at the center, the card for I think it was like the card for the year ahead or whatever, was the sun. And you used the Modern Witch tarot deck for me. And you called that card the girl on the horse. And like the child has, she has her arms wide open, which at that point in my life, I felt very far away from that kind of expansion, but I was making my way towards it. And in a lot of ways, the last several years have been about embodying the girl on the horse. Yeah. So that's a little bit about, and we've done a few things together. I did the Magician's Table in 2022. And I've always been like a lurker of your work and into and all of the Unshaming the Signs stuff. And then when Emergence Astrology Year One came along, it felt like the next like live in like the course I wanted to do with you, where I knew I'd have some FaceTime with you and the group. Yeah.
Oh, I'm very moved by that story of the reading. I can see it in my mind. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
On my phone, I look at it all the time, and I actually still use that spread every year. I do a year ahead spread for myself, and I just use the same questions you gave me. So
Oh
I guess
my gosh.
get to know that. Yeah.
Have to resurrect the offering. It's so powerful. Oh my gosh. Wow. Thank y'all so much for being here. Your yes means a lot to me. As you know, a year ago, I had this wild experiment that I wanted to bring into birth, just like really let it come through super emergently. I could share the vision, like I was able to share the aesthetic, like I was able to share the vibe and aspects of the structure, especially the 9-month Hermitage, followed by a 3-month spring salon. But this whole experience has taken me to the edges of what it is to create emergently, because it's like it wants to come through very live in time. And so the fact that you and so many people said yes based on that trust, it's just very special to me. So thank you for your yes. What a group. We did 9 months without knowing each other in real time space together. It's been so magnificent to feel it land. Because creating for the Hermitage, I was in the dark, as were you. And I can't wait to talk to you about your experience. And I'd love to start with your yes. Like, what about it? Do you remember the promo, something or other that was like, I'm doing this, I'm going to do it?
Well, I guess I can start, because I was such a hell yes for the Hermitage, not even for Emergence Astrology Year One. Actually, I was just here for the Hermitage for the longest time. I needed it. I knew I needed it so badly, and I knew I was so ready for it. And it just came at a particular moment of transition in my life where I knew time in like a me with me kind of way, and with my own gnosis was going to be so important. And I remember listening to some of your podcast episodes at the time, things that were coming through about what this offering was. And I was like, oh, this is Britain's weirdest shit yet. Like, yeah, like I'm so here for what's under her robe, what's under mine. Like, it was, like there was like a lot of humpability there for me. And the thing that was most humpable for me was a lot of the things that were coming through you around gestation and birth, because I had just been in a several year process of so I'm adopted, and I had been in a several year process of meeting biological family, my biological mother, my biological father within the last year and a half, 2 years, and doing a lot of healing work around my own origin story, my own birth story, and working with really young parts of myself. And I felt in a way like I could continue to do that forever. And I knew that I needed some kind of portal that would take me from that place that I was in of going over and over and over again, my origin story, into literally back into the world again, gathering all of the things that I had learned. And I knew I needed like a womb space to be ready to do that and to come through with that kind of integration. And so I can't remember if this was on the podcast or if this was even just maybe in like a first recording transmission that you made for us once we were actually in Emergence Astrology. But there was like this whole thing about like the babies, And I really felt that, I really, really felt like I was birthing myself. And I just knew that this container was where I needed to be. I mean, I first came to your work right as I was on the cusp of meeting my biological mother. And then I was going to be moving to the place that my biological father is from while the Hermitage was beginning. And so I just knew that it was the thing that was going to help me cross that threshold.
So beautiful. Well, I have to, like, I could have had a better in there because my yes was also very tied into the whole gestation. We're cooking babies in here. I don't know. There's something like that you said. It was, and for me, what it triggered in me, besides already all the love that I had about the unshaming from what I was hearing, both from the initial podcasts and then listening to what you were doing and Moon to Moon, what it suddenly made me realize was that my kid had just turned 28. So I was coming into this time period of entering the space around my Saturn return of my actual gestating a baby. And I was like, whoa, now there's this whole other invitation to do this again in some other way. And my kid has always wanted to do astrology together and talked at times about, someday we're going to have a family business. And they got really into astrology during the pandemic. And so I called them up and said, hey, there's this a year-long astrology thing happening. What do you think? And they asked me 3 questions. They were like, why now? Why this? And why her? And I was like, well, why now? Because here's this invitation for us to do this dance together again in a whole different way. It's something that you've really wanted to do. Why her? Um, the whole unshaming thing, but also she happens to have a background in art history, and she's a Pisces, and um, and she this is all like in philosophy, and my kid in school studied science and philosophy and art, and they're an artist. So I feel like there's a resonance there for you with her. And why this? Because, and they gave me permission to share this. They really struggled in traditional academia because they have due to ADHD and some other like learning challenges. And the permission in this container to be like, hey, this is yours. Do this however you want. I'm not going to be seeing how many boxes you get checked off there, and that invitation to be like, this is actually your learning experience, and how do you want to do this while having a really clear scaffolding. So all of those things felt like so compelling, besides just feeling, I wrote this phrase the other day, thinking about it, like this interweaving of spells. That's what it felt like. I kept feeling my actual draw was so powerfully physical. Like I would read one of your emails and be like, feel it in my body, like the pull, like the magnet or the yes, or like you said, Shauna, like, yeah, I want to know what's under those robes too. And so that feeling of the presence of the of vivacity and of the draw of the erotic in it, that, and in the broadest definition of eros, holding all of that pull, and to be claiming that so fully and so bravely, and also the way you said, I don't know how this is going to go, and the ownership of that and the invitation into that. So those are all big reasons for the yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm loving the symmetry around what y'all are both shared, as well as like the ways they each went their own directions. Oh, yeah. It feels really good to know that the things that I was most nervous about at a human level, because yeah, things got weird. I have such magnetism. It just like affirms the way I want the human experience to be. So amazing. Thank you. So how would you describe it? How would you describe the Hermitage, and how did you like make it your own, build it out for yourself, take up space inside of it? Yeah, I'd love to know. Maybe you had different trimesters too. Like 9 months is kind of a long time. It can have its own chapters. Yeah, so I'd love it if you had any anecdotes or just anything that comes through to share about the actual living of the experience.
You want to go first, Shauna?
I can, yeah, I can. I like that you brought up trimesters, Britten, because that helps me divide the year. And actually, for me, the first trimester of the Hermitage, I was still in the United States. So I was living in Brooklyn, about to move. And it was one of the biggest transitions of my life, moving from Brooklyn back into my parents' home, which is my childhood home, and then to Barbados. And so the first trimester was mostly me in Brooklyn, me moving from Brooklyn to my parents' house, and then the beginning of getting to Barbados. There was a lot, like, it was so busy. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like in this Hermitage, and I'm like everywhere, like I'm living in so many different places and Airbnbs, and I'm trying to say goodbye to everybody in my life. And I'm moving through so much stuff. There was so much stuff coming up at that time that was really important. But I had the Hermitage at the same time. And I remember it feeling like this thing that I got to come back to every day, that I got to start my day with and end my day with, at a time when I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do everything that I needed to do for this transition, to cast the spell that I wanted to cast with this transition in my life. And the intentionality of the Hermitage and the daily devotions in particular gave me a rhythm at the beginning that really stabilized me during some of the most massive change I've ever experienced in my life. And so for me, that was my first trimester. And then the second trimester was me in Barbados. I had only been there a couple other times, and I had decided to move there. That was the other big yes of that year. And I moved there, and I was settling into like a 3-month sublet before I was going to be moving into my long-term place. And so those 3 months were a good portion of the second trimester of the Hermitage. And for me, that's where it was like, oh, now I'm really pregnant. It's like, this is where I can start to see it. And it is where I went to my cave. I finally was in Barbados. People kept asking me, like, are you making friends there? And I was like, that's not why I'm here. Like, I'm here to do a Hermitage, like, I'm here to get myself born. What are y'all talking about? I'm not here to make friends. So the second trimester in particular was a very inward time for me, where I really spent a lot of time with the material that you offered, with the transmissions that you offered. And I spent a lot of time in my own channel. And that's I think where I developed like a sense of my own channel and my own gnosis. And it was just day after day after day, sitting with what was coming up for me, and sitting with these practices, sitting with the signs, sitting with the planets, and just listening, and getting comfortable with listening, and getting comfortable with not hearing anything a lot of the times other than like my own sobs. But that is how I began to really understand how my gnosis works. And then the third trimester is when I began to actually step out into Barbados, and my life in Barbados, and let other people know I was pregnant. So I was in the Hermitage, and I was still moving through my life as if I was in the Hermitage with all of the practices that you offered, or most the ones that I was devoted to continuing. But I was simultaneously balancing an external life. I said I wasn't here to make friends, but I made friends, and like, things were beckoning, right? The ancestors were calling me there, and it was time to step into community. And so I began to do so with the third trimester of the Hermitage right alongside me. And so it became a support for me as I began to step into my external life and really, really emerge. I was still in like an inward place, knowing I was still in the Hermitage. I was like a secret. I was like an undercover hermit, at that time. And it gave me a sense of grounding as I was beginning to step out again, and get used to being, just more outward with my energy after having been a bit more closed for a while. And then we got born, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later, what came in the fourth trimester.
Thank you. What about you, Donna?
Well, I was so excited for the Hermitage because I thought, oh, I know how to do this. I'm like a hermit at heart anyway. Like, this is going to be easy. I'll just sink in. And even though I'd heard everything about, you said about like make it, I'm not going to be checking those, see if you check those boxes. I'm like, I want to check those boxes. I was very much in my like, I love being a student and I love like I'm a good student and I like dove into that first, the like I would say I submersed myself in the Cancer material and was doing all of the daily devotions and felt like in the good Scorpio fashion, the deep dive going in for it. And I got seasick. And it's interesting thinking about first trimesters because I was really nauseous my first trimester.
Oh
So I'm
my
like,
God.
oh, look at this. This is a repeat. And I was also on fire. Like my body like was expressed. There was so much heat and so much discomfort. And what I would say now is that part of the intention of deepening self-trust, which was certainly part of the desire to do this emergence astrology, what I first came up with was all of my mistrust, like in my face on a daily basis, and this discomfort in my body, and like, oh God, I fucking hate this. Like, but I got to be a good student because I'm going to stick with it and do those daily devotions. Oh, Saturn and Capricorn, know how to stick with it, and then it broke, So what happened was I realized, wait a second, what if what if being a student can look really different? Like I hear these things in the brow, things come into the brow, and then they don't always go lower than that. So in that first month, I really felt like I couldn't keep doing things the way I always did them. So that crack and falling into a sinkhole and being like, oh, or I don't even know, what am I even doing here? Do I want to do any of this? So I ended up setting everything, all of the daily devotion stuff aside and coming back to it and being like, okay, what is what wants to happen today? And what I recognize about myself is I'm a sampler. So I was like, oh, yeah, today I want to actually go outside and see where everything is in the sky. And then I want to draw a card, and but I don't want to write about it. I'm not even doing journaling. And then the next day would be like, oh, how I did have a profound thought, and I had that really crazy dream about like choking something up. That's significant. Write that one down. But it was different every day. So it like really letting that start to move and shift and be what it was going to be every day. And I had lots of judgments come up. Like I got to Leo season and I thought, oh, here's my sun. I'm going to go in. And like, I did the Leo transmission and maybe a couple of the 2 eye practices, and that was it. And then Virgo season came around, and I was like, I think actually what is really going to serve me is being in community more. I know how to do this hermitage stuff. So then I started signing up for Britten's other containers. I did Moon to Moon, and then I did in December came and I did Unshaping Your Chart and then Seeding the Year. So I kept I actually started going out into community because I realized that's actually what I needed. And it was so different than what I would have ever expected because I was looking like the Hermitage was like, yeah, man, this is my space. Give me the dark caves. And it was like, no, actually, you're what the universe is calling to you really clearly is like, go be in communication with, in relationship with others. That is actually your growth edge right now. Go out there and be with people, be vulnerable, and let's practice that, because that's going to be what really serves the trust. So.
So great. Yeah, really feeling that the like little death experience you had with your student, your inner student manager.
I hope, yeah. Oh yeah, lots of parts. Oh, there, and especially in that first month, they were, yeah, lots coming up to be met and acquainted with.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like what you would say, because there were quite a few individuals who they've taken my classes before. They knew me, they know my voice, but like this was not the container for them, you know? And more than, I would say, more than a usual space, even though it's hard to gauge these things. So I'm curious what you think like the ingredients are for those who did have a impactful Hermitage experience, whatever it looks like, right? Like whatever it looks like, whether you did everything or you didn't do everything. Like what would you say is like the central thing to bring in to receive from it?
One thing I would say is trust. It's about trust what shows up.
Mm-hmm.
That there is great wisdom and opportunity in whatever is showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if it is the last thing that you would have imagined or wanted, even. Yeah. Because on the other, like even in those moments of with the hard things that show up, the being with that and trusting in that and following where that leads is stellar. Not to make a pun, but oops. Sublime. We'll use that. It is sublime. Yes.
What came to my mind immediately was you. Like you bring all parts of you. And, there's that quote, wherever you go, there you are. And so I think that for anyone who's considering this experience, you don't have to like it all the time. You don't have to like yourself all the time. What you're going to be met with, of course, there's a sampler platter of so many things to play with, to learn, to experience, especially in the Hermitage. But the thing that will remain consistent is being with you. And so bring yourself, and you're worth knowing.
Oh my gosh. That's so beautiful, Seana. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, so I think there's someone about to say something.
Well, no, that just reminded me of seeing something from a completely other, of all things, an exercise teacher who's changing what she's doing on YouTube. And I just saw this yesterday and it struck, because it's exactly what Sean is saying. Like when people come to you because it's you or what you're offering because it's you doing the offering, and that it's that we are all bringing ourselves, and the more that we trust in the wholeness that's there, the richer the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess what I'd love to ask next is something about the transition from Hermitage to Spring Salon. And I'm also curious, like, does the Hermitage continue? Like, do you feel there's an aspect where it's still with you now, maybe forever? Or does it feel complete? And also, I'm curious, like, what did you feel that you received, or what did you feel like the impact was for the community that happened? Like, what if you had just started together? And how is it different, the fact that you had the Hermitage before meeting each other? And like, what effects does that cast on the salon experience? You can kind of riff from anywhere.
Well, I can say that I was more on the end of the spectrum of hesitant to leave the Hermitage. Uh, you kept, doing the thing that's like the good attachment thing, the good change thing, where you were like, and a couple months from now, the Hermitage will be ending.
Yeah.
Right now, you kept marking time very well, Britten. And I had parts that were like, no, it's not. No, it's not. And I'm not coming out. You can't make me. And even I remember sitting in the initiation gathering with everybody. And it was just very clear we were out of the Hermitage in terms of the group container. And I don't know about you all. This is called a fourth trimester for a reason. And with that, so I definitely had some parts that wanted to stay in the Hermitage forever. There are probably just parts of me who had been longing for that kind of way of being with myself for so long, and we're so ready for it. But of course, what I've realized is that I just bring that along with me, and I do that. We still get to do all of that together now. It's just we're doing that, and I'm also in community. And so what I have discovered is that I'm really loving the group container, and being in group learning. And it's the first time in a while where I really feel, in a way, like there's like an feeling open to learning, an openness to learning that is feeling different than I have felt in a long time. Because during the Hermitage, I worked with parts of myself that carry shame around not getting things right and needing to do everything perfect and wanting to know everything. And I got to see the ways that those parts were showing up in my life. And so when I got to the learning container with the rest of the group, I began to show up differently than I have shown up in the past. And it has allowed me to go deeper in my learning and in my connection with other people, and actually want to be like more of me is in this experience than has sometimes been in other learning containers. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but I felt like I feel like I understand something about myself now and what I need in learning spaces. And I do feel like, knowing that everybody had done their version of the Hermitage, whatever it had looked like for them, it made me feel a little safer coming into the space for learning. It made me feel more willing and more trusting, to step into community again, and let myself be seen and let myself be witnessed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I definitely noticed the impact of Hermitage first, and I felt like people came in having spent time with themselves, no matter whether it meant actually with all the material, some of them, or none of them. Like, people came in with that that time and that devotion. There's a reason you call those daily devotions. And that does make a difference. In terms of groups, I have rarely been in groups where there is so much kindness, openness, respect, gentle holding of each other. And it's stunning. It really, and it's an amazing space to be in and to both participate in creating and then feel that buoying from. And the conversations have been amazing. I've looked forward to whether it's as we're doing you're presenting materials in the bigger groups and the weaving in. That's what I would say. I feel like the movement back and forth between the material and then people's experience of it is really it's beautiful, and it's also fluid. There's a fluidity there that feels so good. Thinking like, oh, where's my fifth house, Pisces? It's the most unencumbered place on my chart. So that I think has been really good. And also what I would say is that just the unwinding, even watching people from group meeting to group meeting, and seeing how what's emerging in them and what's moving and how that happens between us. So as somebody is loosening over here, you can see it, or actually hear people are saying like, wow, you just said this thing and I just feel like my entire life just changed. So that it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I was saying this in my last podcast episode that the way astrology just like, it's almost like I'm seeing like a hammock or something. Like it creates this interconnecting weave between people that brings out like the most beautiful qualities in human beings with each other. It's just, there's something so magical about astrology that way.
And I will say this particular container of astrology, because I've been studying astrology for close to 30 years now, in and out, and been in lots of different containers, and all have been wonderful in their own ways. And I'll never forget when you sang astrology has a this side and a that side, and I was like, oh my God, yes, yes, and the holding of those things together. I keep feeling like these infinity loops, but that and the holding of them in equal importance, like they move together, they're different sides, as like as you said, of the hoop, the embroidery hoop.
Yeah, that's the word.
Image. It was so funny. It was so funny. You're like, I'm like, oh yes, I know what that is.
Like
yes,
it's a
that's
circle.
Circle and then yeah, and just I was just say the fractal nature of all of this, and the holding of that too, and there's just been a way that this container, I feel like, holds that in ways that I haven't experienced before.
You know, something I'm thinking about, and Donna, I think it relates to what you're talking about. Like, and even I was thinking about when Britten sang, and there were multiple times in the over the course of the Hermitage where I'd turn on my, whatever transmission was for the month, and Britten would be singing, and it was just there was a vulnerability that you created the container in from the very beginning, Britten, and then it showed up in and it felt very authentic, very like of the moment, very emergent. I felt like I got to watch you stepping into something new for yourself. Um, and that informed my understanding of what kind of astrology we were up to. And then when we stepped into the learning container together, like that, I think that is also part of the special sauce that makes the live learning container now so fun and so rich. And Donna, like you said, so kind. That's one of the things I've really been struck by is the kindness in these spaces. Like there are moments where some of my protector parts that come up in group spaces, I notice them bubbling to the surface, and then I get to listen to the way someone else responds to whatever the question or comment or whatever someone might be sharing. And I am so struck and so humbled by the kindness that just seems to kind of overflow from people in the space. And I think it's because there is this foundation of vulnerability that was set from the very beginning when you decided to say yes to the invitation to Emergence Astrology, the big dream. All the way back then, not knowing what it would be, I think one of the seeds that got planted was actually this like permission for people to really show up, for me to really show up. And so I feel like we haven't had a chance even to like fully love on you yet about this experience. I just.
Right on. Yeah, yeah. I'm just going to piggyback on that to say that your example on a regular basis, to be able to witness you in your vulnerability and letting yourself try things out and move with that and be so uh, transparent with all of it. Like we get to be right there with you. And it's like any good tuning fork. So you do that and that hits that vibration in me. And then I can feel that when somebody else, like Seana, you're saying, I have lots of protective parts in groups. And ooh, sometimes it's like, oh, honey, sit down. Whoa, back up. you know, um, and to be able to actually even do that and not feel ashamed. Like that's the unwinding of the shame of that too, comes back to watching it keeps weaving back to like how you show up and how you invite us all into this space because it's just amazing and so just so stunning, compelling, sublime, all of it.
Oh gosh. Thank you. I'm receiving that. Um, yeah, it's such a healing thing to be witnessed in your vulnerability, with other human beings. Hmm. And yeah, it's just so affirming for our world, when you
Yeah.
can feel that really it it does exist. Mm. Thank y'all so much for coming on here and sharing. about your experiences. Is there anything that you're like, I'll be so upset if I don't say that one other thing? Or is there anything else that you want to name before we start moving towards the door?
Yeah, I have one thing. I just want to really acknowledge the incredible smorgasbord of information of this side that you actually do give us. Like I like looking, I love going looking at all those things and thinking about like, oh, I have all of these things to look at for forever. And it's the transmissions and the information on the planets and the tarot cards, which is like there's just so much that you give us here. It's just like, oh yeah, this is like the all you can eat buffet that you can go to forever.
Yay.
Yeah, so that part is it's amazing how much there is there.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Donna. And piggybacking off of that, there are things I didn't get to the first round, like there's things there's so much to choose from. And so at a certain point, I just decided on the things that were working for me day to day, week to week, and month to month. And for year two, which I do plan to do, I'm still gonna be doing my daily devotions, and we're gonna go back to Cancer season, and I'm gonna listen to that transmission again. So there's stuff in there that I intend to go back to. There's stuff I'm excited to get to listen to or work with for the first time. A lot of the things in the mystic pathways are so special, and I can't wait to continue to practice them. So I really do feel like the Hermitage comes with me. It just comes with me into my external life, and while I'm in the external learning containers. But there's so much foundation that I intend to continue because it was that impactful.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, it's like my biggest fear at the start was like, what if I over that side, not enough this side? I know how to over this side, but what if? So I'm glad it felt that way, and it will continue to. Yeah, I feel like year two is going to be really about rooting. It's like the rooting into all of this deeper. So it's just becomes that much more embodied and like rich. I'm excited to see what happens, right? Once again, we're surfing this wave together for the first time. Well, thank you so much. Would you like to share how folks can connect with you in any way, or share anything that you're offering? Yeah.
Sure. Okay. I am so old school. So I don't have social media for my business. I'm a body worker. But I'm also moving more into back into. I took the year off from doing readings because I really just wanted to devote myself to my own learning and my own immersion. So yeah, if people are interested in astrology readings, you can reach me by old school ways. My email address is Donna, DONNA discoveries@gmail.com. And you can call or text me. I use phones. Oh my God, who does that? 607-227-2572. And yeah, that's my business name is Discoveries.
And for me, if folks want to connect further, I have two things that I do kind of out in the world. I'm a therapist, a psychotherapist for most of my day job. And I offer therapy intensives as well as individual therapy, including IFS and EMDR. folks can reach me at seanapeterson.com for that work. Licensed in Massachusetts, New York, and New Hampshire currently. And then I just started a little tarot side hustle, side business, side project called Tiny Island Tarot, which I do in person in Barbados, in case anybody ever is in Barbados wanting a reading. But I also offer, virtual readings everywhere, and you can find me at tinyislandtarot.com.
Oh, how exciting. Thank you all so much for coming. And all that info will be in the show notes. And just so grateful to you for going with me.
Oh, thank you.
This is fun, Britten. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, so many thanks.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Seana. So grateful for your yes, so grateful to know you, so grateful for your time, your voice, and your wisdom that you shared with Moon to Moon here in episode 185. Listeners, inviting you to connect with Donna and Seana if you feel a resonance with their voices, if you're curious to reach out, see what happens. So if you have been listening this long and you're contemplating joining us in Emergence Astrology, the experience, which begins for everyone with year one, then please be aware that early bird begins June 13th on Friday, and it's that day only. For people in my newsletter, I'm going to give you all the link Thursday night just to give you a little more time. But officially, the doors open Friday, the 13th. So note that for your time zone, wherever you are in the world. This year, we had people all over the world doing Emergence Astrology Year One. Now moving on to Year Two. This past year, we had people with very little in study of astrology, all the way to people like Donna who've been studying and giving readings for decades. So as you can imagine from listening, this is not an astrology class. I mean, it is, but it's something else. It's a place to grow your chicken feet. That's a Baba Yaga reference. So this is really about learning to hold yourself and be a home for emergence, to be the home for transformation, to be the home for all of you, to be however you are in any moment. In this hermitage, however you relate to it, how deeply you do the actual stuff that I give you, or if you're just like holding the frequency of the hermitage. It's not about what you do as much as it is about how you hold the frequency of the fact of your being in a hermitage. And I'm giving you lots of things to support you with that. I'm giving you all kinds of intuitive, mystical practices to learn to be someone who holds space for yourself and has gnosis and receives visions. And I'm giving you all kinds of support to support you in this mystical life of living with the unknown. There is quite a bit of astrology. Because astrology is what holds us. Astrology is in the room with us. Astrology is carrying us. Astrology as part of the animated world that is also holding us and is very much alive. One of the things that I talk about in Emergence Astrology Year One and beyond is that astrology has a this side and a that side. And that side of astrology is the side of the unknown. And so we're playing with the unknown here, and you're learning to cultivate structure and practices so that you can feel like a person who can hold that down, for yourself with the rhythms and the rituals and the repetitions that are part of the Mystics Toolkit. We're really building out the Mystics Toolkit here, and astrology is here to help us with that. When we get to the spring salon, we begin to talk about things like the ascendant and the descendant and the midheaven. But we are doing this from an emergence astrology perspective. So if you've been studying astrology for decades, you can blend in this approach to yours. Or if you're new to astrology, you can let this be the way you learn it, And so there's so much to say about what we're doing here. Each of these episodes that I'm putting out right now is really just poking at like one part of it. It's a very vast space, and everybody's finding their own corners. Everyone's with their lantern, finding their own things, and you own the material. You have it forever. So you will forever be potentially spiraling through the Hermitage again and again and again, and returning to the tools and returning to the practices that you really scaffold down for yourself. Here, how you do that is your business. So you're sovereign in how you want to take what you receive here. And I really appreciate how that was such a strong message in our conversation, because it's so important to me, It's so important to me, and someone can say something's important to them, but it's in the experiencing it from others that can be shown to be really alive and true for those experiencing it, So it just feels so incredible to receive the reflections that came through in this conversation, because for the most part, I've just been allowing everybody to be having their own experience and trying to stay out of how they feel about that, because it's not really my business. So, all right. We begin June 20th. We begin at the summer solstice, and the doors will close and they won't open again for another year. So, if you have any questions about this, such an unusual container, I'm trying to put out as much as I can to give you as much information for your logical brain, but at the end of the day, you're either called to this intuitively and somatically, just like my soul is taking me here. Like, this is just going to be a yes for me, that's really the vibe. Like, whether or not you should do this is not really logical. So, I think that's enough. I think that's all I need to say. Thank you so much. The links for Emergence Astrology Year One are in the show notes. Go explore, stay close to the promo if you're thinking about it, if you're feeling it, if you're wanting it. And do please ask any questions. I'm happy to support you in talking through anything that you may wonder about regarding this experience. So thank you. Have a beautiful full moon in Sagittarius. See you at the next one.